Welcome, Facebook. Guess what tonight is? It's Tuesday at 5:30, and that means it's time for Sales Hustler Spotlight. And we got a great one for you tonight. I'm excited. We're going to bring you some knowledge tonight and drop some great stuff for you. Guess who we have? I'm sure you probably know. That's why you're tuned in. We have Jonathan Dawson. You guys probably know him on Facebook land in Psychology, who he's a great trainer. He's very well known in Facebook. He goes around to dealerships, helps them improve their process, and changes dealerships and the car business one salesperson at a time. Jonathan, why don't you say hi to everybody here at Facebook?
Hey guys, how is everybody doing in Facebook land? I'm so excited to be here, Shawn.
Well, we're excited to have you. Before we get started, I want to tell everybody today, I want to thank QuickPage for the sponsor. I call them the best video app in the business. They help me every day sell cars along with a lot of other car sales people out there. I also want to let you know if you have any comments or any questions that come up during the end, why don't you stick them in there in the comments section, and maybe we'll have time to ask Jonathan a few extra questions today. We're going to fill him with a lot of questions tonight because I know he's got a lot of knowledge. He's been doing this a long time and been helping a lot of salespeople along the way. Tonight, he's going to help us out. Jonathan, I want to get it started tonight. I want to kind of find out a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up, and why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, my friend. So if we're going to talk a little biography, I will start with my name is actually Jonathan William Charles James Dawson. So a little bit of trivia for you. My mother is British, and she couldn't decide what name she liked, so she went with all of those. So I'm Jonathan William Charles James Dawson. As the story goes, when my mom was pregnant, and she said she had a vision of me being behind a big desk, and it had a nameplate on the desk that stretched from one side of the desk to the other. And she saw Jonathan William Charles James Dawson, so she created that imagination turned into what she wanted to name me. So I was born in Texas. I was almost born in England because my mother is British. My mother and father met when he was stationed there in the Air Force. And I was born in the bottom of Texas in a town called Laredo. So here's another piece of trivia for you. I am a Mexican as well. So my father is Hispanic. My grandmother was first generation Mexican-American. My grandfather's from El Salvador. So I have roots there as well. So my brother is Jaime Fernando, and then I'm Jonathan William. So you can imagine that's kind of fun. He actually looks like a Mexican. I don't, but I grew up on the border. So I've moved around quite a bit. My family moved a lot. Although born on the bottom of Texas, I've lived all over the place. Lived in Texas, lived in England, lived in Ireland. Lived back in Texas, lived in California, lived in Washington, lived in Arkansas, lived in Kansas, lived in Minnesota, and now live in Georgia. So I'm from all over. People like to ask me, John, where are you from? And I say, this is not like I'm not trying to be difficult on purpose, but it's not a really easy question to answer. And then people say, well, where did you go to school? Like, where'd you go to high school? And I say, well, again, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I started college at 15, so I didn't go to high school. I was homeschooled from 13 to 15, and then I took my GED in the state of Washington, which was the earliest age you could take your GED, and then I started college. So I started college at 15. So I didn't have high school either. So I've moved around quite a bit, and I've had a rather weird childhood, and I think it contributed to me being a kind of weird person.
Well, we got to stop there for a second, Jonathan, because you're my 13th person on here, and none of us pretty much went to college, and you're the guy that went at 15. That's a huge extreme difference there. How was it, first of all, being homeschooled? I obviously wasn't, and not a lot of people that I know have been. What was that like?
Well, so to give you a little bit of perspective, it wasn't a traditional version of homeschool. Like, I think today homeschooler kids, again, if they're going through a formal homeschooling program, it's probably a lot different than mine experience was. Essentially what happened was we were living in Washington State on the Cascade Mountains in a small town called Selleck. And Selleck, when I say small town, there's like 22 houses, one stop sign. The way you bought milk was you had to go 3 miles down the road to the local bar that also carried jugs of milk. So we were up on the woods. So from when we moved there at 13 years, when I was 13, I lived there from 13 to 16. When we moved there, this being the small little kind of old logging community, the closest school to go to was an hour and a half by school bus each way. So most of the kids in my town were all homeschooled. which back then actually only meant that you got to play in the woods, you got to build forts, you got to play hide and seek, and you basically just didn't annoy your parents and they didn't really care what you did. So I wouldn't really call it homeschooling so much as not going to school. But me and my friends, we loved having interesting conversations. Obviously I'm wired a little bit weird in my brain, so I think of the world a little bit different. So when we were talking, one of my buddies discovered that in the state of Washington, that if you were 15 years old, you could technically take a GED, which is an equivalency to a high school diploma, and you could start college. So me and a bunch of our friends were like, hey, we're all turning 15 this year. Why don't we all go to college together? So we decided to do that. And I went to school at a community college at first. And of course, you're 15 years old. So, don't get me wrong. I'm not like Doogie Howser or anything crazy. I'm not going to med school. But I did start going to school and took classes. And at first, like first semester though, I took like basket weaving, like swimming. Like it was my first semester in college at 15. So we didn't like load it with a bunch of classes, but I started doing water polo. Another piece of trivia about me. I'm a water polo. Well, I'm not anymore. I was a water polo player. I used to run around or swim around, I guess, and play water polo, which is a fantastic. I think it's one of the only true real sports left in society. It's like gladiators in a pool. Anyway, so that was what it was like. It was, it was a unique experience.
What was going to college? Was it a normal college life at age 15, dealing with a bunch of older people? How was that dynamic?
Well, obviously I'm a bigger guy. I'm 6'3". So, I was 6'3" at 15. So I already kind of looked older. I was, generally speaking, I carried myself more maturely. So I kind of blended in. But no, it was college classes. It was, normal college life. I was never a partier. I never got sucked into that world at all. So I'm grateful for that, but I didn't get into any of that. It was like I said, there was like four of us that were all the same age, and we all said, let's go to college. So we just all did. And we just thought it was, at the time, we just thought it was kind of a funny joke to be able to say we started college at 15 and we're graduate and we're college freshmen. We just kind of did it because we thought it was funny. And then, kept going to school, but I didn't complete my degree. So again, I dropped out as a junior because I got into real estate investing when I was 18. So I became a real estate investor at 18 years old, and I was going to school full time, and I was selling part-time on the weekends as a door-to-door salesman. And so I dropped out of college because it was at the time the thing that was costing me money and not making me money. And so I stopped as a junior. So I never completed my degree.
What do you think about, I hear a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that we look up to daily in business. A lot of them don't believe in the college road nowadays. What do you think about that?
Well, so my wife has her master's degree, and she actually has a master's in industrial organizational psychology. So when it comes to psychology, she actually has a real degree in psychology. She's got her undergrad and her master's. So one thing I've learned from admiring my wife's character is that the advantage of school, I think, is it gives you the environment and the opportunity to learn certain disciplines that you might not have if you didn't have someone imposing them on you all the time. So one of the big regrets I have actually about dropping out of school was that I didn't learn some of the disciplines and habits that schooling, if you take it seriously, can provide for you. The structure that it forces you to learn things you don't want to learn. It forces you to do things you don't want to do, forces you to get up and go where you don't want to get up and go. And there's certain disciplines that I think school can provide that are character building disciplines that are really important. And quite frankly, the ability to learn how to learn is also, I think, really good. Retention of information and studying. So I believe that there's advantages to school, but I don't think it's the actual knowledge that you get so much as the character development that you can get if you do it the right way, which not everybody does, of course.
Well, you mentioned a second ago, you left in your junior year to go into real estate investing. What led you in? What got you in there? Did a friend or something you dabbled in and all of a sudden you liked it?
So this is a little interesting story. So like I said, since I started college at 15, by the time I was 17, I was a junior. And in the town that I lived in, as long as you were a junior, you didn't have to live at home anymore. So at 17, I moved out of my parents' house, moved in with a roommate. He ended up selling the house that he was living in. And so I was kind of homeless for like a minute, where I had to figure out where I was going to live instead. So I moved into a house that I had several roommates with. The problem was that this house, the head roommate who was paying the rent, he took all of our money and he left town. So he left me and the other roommates high and dry. We were stuck. We had all paid rent, and now we were basically being evicted because we didn't actually pay rent. We paid rent to the guy, but he didn't pay it to the actual property owner. And what that led to is it led to unfortunately a situation where I was now going to be homeless again. And my mother at the time said across the street there was this dilapidated house that had been left in ruins, and there was a guy there trying to fix it up, the owner of the house. So she said, why don't you go see if he will let you live there, and maybe you can clean up the whole thing, and you can move in without having to pay rent because the place is it's a disaster. So that's exactly what I did. I essentially, negotiated, hey, let me move in. I'll clean everything up over the weekend, and you can decide if you want me to stay here or not. Well, fast forward, after I fixed up the house 3 months later, he lets me know that he's selling the house and that I'm going to be evicted yet again. And this would be now my third home in a matter of like 6 months. And I'm like, this is really driving me nuts. So over a period of time, he kept saying, hey, just so you know, next month, I'm probably going to kick you out. Hey, just so you know, next month, I'm probably going to kick you out. And I was an 18-year-old kid, and I was working at a deli, making $5.15 an hour as an assistant manager. I was working part-time as a salesman, selling door to door. I had this crazy thought: why don't you ask the guy if you can buy the houses? And so the next time he came to pick up rent, I just looked at him and said, hey, I want to. Sorry, I don't know if I'm still here. Am I still here, buddy?
Yeah, we're good, man. I got you. Can you hear me?
Hey, sorry, Shawn, do you still have me?
I do.
I lost you for a second, buddy.
I got you.
Yeah, hold on. You dropped off speaker wise. So you can still hear me, yes?
I can still hear you.
Yeah, I lost you for a second on the speakers. I'm sorry. The TV here got hijacked. Let me disconnect this real quick. Sorry.
No problem. Hey, a little technical difficulty. Never hurt nobody. I want to, while he's fixing that, just to let everybody know, Sales Hustler Spotlight. We next week is Christmas, so I don't think we have anything next week, but I'm pretty excited for the following weeks, man. We got some big guests coming. We're going to be doing some big things.
All right, Shawn, can you hear me okay again?
I can. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. My computer decided to do an update or something, so I turned off the background screen.
No problem. You're good to go now.
Okay, so anyway, so what I was saying was, though, I basically had this opportunity to buy the houses because I just asked them, hey, do you personally feel comfortable, telling me how you're trying to sell the houses? What are you trying to do? And the guy basically said, look, I'm trying to sell these houses. My dad's passing away. I need to sell them all. So I said, well, would you consider selling them to me? And he said, I guess so. Yeah, why not? So he decided to sell me the house, and I ended up buying that house and 2 houses around the corner and 2 lots behind that. So at 18 years old, I now had 3 homes and 2 lots. I was collecting rent from my, at that time, roommates.
I do have a little bit of feedback from something going on over there, Jonathan.
Okay, buddy. Give me 2 seconds here.
No problem. You got plenty of time, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. Everything when we tested things sounded great. Yeah,
no, you sound good. It sounded like there was a video playing or something.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds here. I think that's the YouTube videos that we're playing. I'm stopping that now. Now I see it.
Okay. Man, you had a long drive today, brother.
6 hours,
6 hours. He goes over. You had a lot of problems with the Atlanta power outage, I'm sure.
Yeah, anybody who knows what's going on in Atlanta these days knows that Atlanta was a hot mess recently with the power outage. I think 10 hours. People, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to complain in life when you're not stuck on a tarmac for 7 hours on a plane. I'm not talking about much. So, all right, I can hear you fine. Do you have any background noise now, buddy? Or are you good?
I do not. All right. So you mentioned that you were door-to-door sales. What were you selling at that time?
Okay, so back then, those of you who are old enough to appreciate this, I was in the home electronics business when Dish Network first came out. So Dish Network at the time was was a new technology. Digital television, digital programming was all new technology. It didn't exist before that, so everything was analog TV, analog signal. Well, anyway, so the elder of my church came to me one day. I was an outgoing 17-year-old kid in youth group, and he says, "Hey, I've got this vision from God. One day I believe everyone will have digital programming in their home." And I remember looking at Leon, and I said, "Leon, I have no idea what that means." And he says, "No, one day," he says, "like, you know what a DVD player is, right, John?" I said, "Well, yeah, I guess I know what a DVD player is." He says, "One day, every home in America will have a DVD player."
Wow.
I was like, "No, they're $500. I can't see that happening." So that was so he recruited me to be a door-to-door sales rep. So I started knocking on doors and selling door-to-door. Dish Network, DVD players, digital televisions. We had a line of credit with a local credit union. And I would start knocking on doors and trying to convince people to upgrade from the 11 channels they got on their C-band dish or their antennas, 6 channels they got, to you could get up to 13 digital channels. Up to 13. So
what year was that? What year was that?
Well, that would have been what, mid 90s?
Okay. All right, so we're in door to door. How long did you do that for?
So I was a door to door guy for about 2.5 years. I was doing it pretty hard and heavy. I started at 17. By the time I was in my 19, 20, in that age, I was still dabbling in it, but just on the weekends. And then I was doing my real estate. So I sold those original houses I bought. I sold them, and I bought 8 more. I had 16. At my peak, I had 16 rental apartments. And I was 19, 20 years old with 16 rental apartments. So that was creating a lot of passive residual income for me. So I didn't really need to work at all. So I was living off the income on rental properties, and then I was doing the door-to-door thing on the side. I became the sales trainer for the company, and so I was training them. We eventually grew the thing. We had like 66 sales reps in like 5-6 states, and I was the trainer at 19 years old, teaching them all how to get inside people's houses. You know, how do you break down the barrier and get someone to let you in their home?
All right, so here we are. We're 19 years old. You've gone to college. You've got however many rental properties. You got passive income. You're knocking door to doors. You started a company that basically is the digital world of what we know today, even before its time. Then you become the trainer for the company. How the heck did you find car sales? I mean, that sounds like a retirement right there. I'm ready to go. I'm done, man. I'm good.
Well, so I got married at 22 years old to my sweetheart. We were best friends from 17. I got married at 22, and we relocated for her to get her master's degree. We moved to Kansas. Now, at the time, I still had all my rental property, and the owner of the satellite company offered me an option if I wanted to, where he would open up a satellite location, and I could start my own team out there in Kansas. But I didn't really want to do that. I had been doing it for a while, and it wasn't something I was wanting to do full time. I didn't want a job. And then also the real estate, I couldn't really manage them from Arkansas to Kansas, so I had to sell them. So I started selling them all off. But when I moved to Kansas, I moved there August 12th. I moved there August 10th. I moved there August 10th. August 11th, I woke up with the U-Haul in my driveway, kissed my bride, and said, I'm going to go open up a checking account and scope out our new town. While I was at the credit union opening up a checking account, as close as I can ever say, and anyone who can testify to having experience like this can relate to this, but as close as I can say, I heard a voice that wasn't my own. I now know that it was God directing me, but at the time, it was just this random thought that was so crystal clear, and it was obviously not my own thought. I didn't understand it. It said to me, go sell cars. And I remember like filling out stuff at the bank, and I have this like piercing thought into my soul, go sell cars. And I thought, what an obscure, weird, and random thought. And I could keep filling out my paperwork, go sell cars. Go sell cars. 3 times I hear this crystal clear. And I turned to the lady at the counter and said, where are the car dealerships in town? She said, there's only 3. They're right down the road. You can't miss them. So I drive down the road and I pull into the first dealership on the strip, which was a Toyota, Chrysler, Dodge, Plymouth, Jeep dealership. And walked in the store, and I had what I call now an out-of-body experience. It was the only way to describe it. It was like an out-of-body experience. So first of all, I walk into one side of the dealership, and across the show floor is a man who's bigger than me. I'm a big dude, but he's big. He's like 6'6", 300 pounds. He's physically grabbing someone and throwing them out the other side of the dealership. And he's saying, "Go on, get out then. Go on, get out. I don't need you." And I'm walking one side and see that on the other side. I'm like, whoa, what the heck is going on? And I go up to the receptionist and said, "Hey, can I talk to somebody about a job?" And she says, "Yeah, hold on, Seth. Hey, Seth, this guy needs to talk to you." And that same dude who was throwing someone out is walking up to me, and he crushes my hand. He shakes my hand and just crushes it. And he says, "I'm Seth Hively. How can I help you?" And I said, "Sir," and this is the out-of-body experience. I don't even know where this came from. I said, "Sir, today I will have a job selling cars, and it'll be for you or your competition, and you don't want me working for your competition. I'd like to interview you and see if this is a place I'd like to work."
You said that?
Straight up, verbatim. I still remember it like it was a minute ago. It was like, I almost like I watched myself. I was like, where is this coming from? This is nuts. And so he's like, "Son, tell me your story." And so I got into a little miniature bidding war between him and the Ford Nissan store across the street. They both wanted to hire me. So they started bidding against each other for a guarantee to hire me. I'd never sold a car before in my life. I didn't know anything about the car business. Anyway, so I started at the store, Emporium Motors, and that's where I got in the car business. I got hired, started the next day, sold my first car, sold 10 cars in 12 days, and thought I was King Kong. And then those of you who know my story know that the following month, I set a goal of 20. Everybody laughed, thought I was nuts. And I set a goal of 20, and I only sold 12. So I adjusted my goal again to 15, which everybody still thought was nuts. And I sold 3 cars, and I got fired. And that is my start in the car business.
All right. So we have to spend a little bit of time on that, Jonathan, because you go from this guy that's so confident. You walk in. I mean, you've done a lot in your life already. You've done more than a lot of us have at that age. What age did you start the car business? I was wondering.
Yeah, 22.
Okay. So you're 22. You walk in there.
Got married.
Ultra confident, shaking hands, telling them, "You better hire me. We got a bidding war for me." You come in, you sell the cars. You have a great first start. And then your third month in the business, you sell 3 cars.
Yeah, I sold 3 cars. And like I said, it's actually worse than that. So not only did I sell 3 cars, I sold 3 cars, and they gave me a check. They actually printed it. To this day, it's my one big regret of the car business is that I didn't frame this check. I should have framed it. They printed a check for 0.00. They actually printed 0. It costs more to print it. They would have saved money. Accounting should have not printed it and saved the paper, but they printed 0.00, put a sticky note attached that said, "You owe us," whatever it was, like $242 and some change, "unless you're fired." And it was signed by the office manager. So I sold 3 cars. They were all minis. They took out taxes, insurance, some other charges for being new. At the end of a month, they gave me an envelope. I open it up, and it says 0.00. "You owe us money unless you're fired." Then immediately after I open that up and I'm trying to process what I'm looking at, I get paged over the intercom by the owner, who's also the GM. He pages me to his office. I walk into the office. I'm standing in the doorway, and he says, "You can pack up you're fired." And I said, "I'm sorry?" He says, "Yeah, you're sucking up my air conditioning. I don't got time for guys like you. You're a waste of space. You're fired." I'm like, "Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now?" He's like, "Yeah, you're not taking this business seriously." He says, "You came in, you did some stuff, and now, you know what? I need committed people. You're not committed. I ain't got time for guys like you. You can just pack up and leave." And at that moment, I don't know if he was testing me. I actually have never asked him if he was testing me or if he was literally serious. I think he was serious. The impression I got was he was serious. But I basically, at that moment, I'm a 22-year-old kid. I just worked all month long for no money. I'm now fired. I have to go home to explain to my wife, who trusts me, needs me, and depends on me to provide for her. And I have to somehow explain to her how not only have I not seen her all month long, but now I have no money and I'm fired. And so this thought flashes through my mind: get your job back, you idiot, get your job back. So I convinced the guy, the owner, to give me a second chance. I said, "Look, I sold 10 cars my first 12 days. I sold 12 cars the month after that. I don't know why I only sold 3 cars last month, but it'll never happen again. I've never failed at anything. I'm not failing at this. Give me another chance and I'll prove you wrong." He says, "You have to the end of the day, prove you wrong. Get out of my office." Now, at the moment, I'm being transparent here. At the moment, I only wanted to get my job back so that I could go across the street to the Ford Nissan store and not be unemployed when I applied over there for the job. That was my only plan at the moment. But I walked out behind the dealership, and had what I now refer to as my come to Jesus moment, where I got into an argument with God. And that's where everything changed from there.
Wow, that's very powerful, man. I want to understand what you would feel like as a 22-year-old person going home and explaining that to her, because you'd been successful up to then. And that's probably the first time she had seen you in a failing role. And that's a horrible thing for a young person probably to feel with and to deal with. When you went back in and after you had your come to Jesus moment, did you go back in and sell cars there, or did you go across the street like you said?
No, I had my come to Jesus moment, and I stayed at the store. And those who follow me, if you've watched my video, if you ever Google Psychology Story, there's a video that explains this. But basically, I went behind the store, and I was really angry because when I heard go sell cars, I felt like God was directing me to the dealership. So I kind of thought I'm supposed to be here. And then I got here and realized the place sucks. The customers are liars and bullies. The management, they're liars and bullies. The coworkers I worked with were freaking liars and bullies. I'm surrounded by liars and bullies. I hate the place, which is part of the reason why my numbers kept dropping. I'm like, I hate these people. I don't want to work here. And I'm like, why am I here? This place sucks. And behind the dealership, having this argument with God, I said, hey, why am I here? This place sucks. It shouldn't be like this. Why am I stuck here? And after I was arguing, again, for those of you who've ever had an intimate relationship with Christ, or if you have a personal relationship with God, you know a little bit of what this feels like when the presence of God hits you. But what happened was I just heard very clearly, it's all your fault. And I was like, are you serious right now? Are you kidding me? Are you even paying attention to what's going on down here? How is this my fault? No traffic, no training, no support. Managers are liars. Salespeople are liars. Customers are liars. How is this my fault? And then again, it's all your fault. And the third time it hit me, it's all your fault. That's when I broke. And I began weeping, and I realized it was all my fault. I had hardened my heart. I wasn't really there to honor God. I really wasn't there to honor my employer. I was there to pass time. And to some degree, my owner was correct. I was sucking up his air conditioning. And I decided from that point forward, I made a solemn oath promise to God. I said, if you'll show me how to do this, I'll do it in a way that honors you. I'll do it in a way that honors my dealer. I'll do it in a way that honors my customers. I will be the number one salesman in this dealership. I will be the number one salesman in this town, and I will change the way people buy cars if you'll just show me how to do it the right way. And that was the beginning of Psychology. That was the beginning of the change. That was the beginning of everything turning around. So
you turned around right then. Obviously, the great finish to this story probably is going to be you went in and sold 150 cars that month, right?
No, nothing like that. In fact, people like to ask me, hey, did you go back in and sell a car that day? I don't even remember. I don't remember if I sold a car that day or not. What I do remember is that I came to work with intentionality and purpose from that point forward. I committed to a new path. I was no longer there to see if I could sell a car. I was there to do something much bigger than that. I was on a mission now. And so over time, gradually, I ended up becoming the top salesperson in that dealership and in that town. I dethroned a guy who'd been salesman of the year for 13 years in a row, and did it in under 2 years. And I did it the right way. I mean, the real feather in my cap of that whole season, the real honor, when God honors a promise, there's something so majestic about his sovereignty. So not only did God honor that promise that this 22-year-old broke kid made, but my dealer who hired me, then fired me, then gave me a second chance and allowed me back into the store to sell, and then watched me succeed. Later on, when I had started my training company, that same dealer hired me back as a trainer to train and sit in a room with the very same salespeople that I sold with, and train them now. The owner of the store said, John, our biggest regret watching you succeed was that we never took the time to ask you what you were doing. We never said, show us what you're doing. He says, and now, and he told us, he said, now I have to pay you for you to tell me what you did while you sold for me. And so that was one of my greatest honors, because that's when I made that promise to God, I wanted to honor my dealer. Even though I did, at the time, I didn't like him at all. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't like him. I didn't trust him, but I wanted to honor him. And I wanted to honor my customers. And so I changed who I was and what I was about. And I look back on those times, man, and it was very tough, but it was all worth it.
That's a great story, Jonathan. I absolutely love it. I'm glad you got to share it because a lot of people, I watch you every day, but I didn't know that story. I didn't know any of that. And I did watch one of your videos today, and it actually said that you walked back in and trained that group after the boss, the owner, the dealer principal came and asked all the other guys, would it be okay if Jonathan came in? And they all said yes. And then you now have to go train the people that you worked with, which I think would be really hard. I don't know why. I just feel like it would be hard because it's easier, I think, for other people to follow you than the people that you've worked with. I think. My perception. What do you think?
Well, there's a expression, Jesus in the scriptures, it says in the Bible that Jesus was limited in the impact or miracles he could do in his own hometown. Quoting that prophet is rarely received in his own hometown. So there is a lot of truth to that people don't necessarily receive that thing which is too close for them. Whatever is in proximity, we tend to take for granted. And so there was definitely the advantage that I had was the season of space between when I left the store to when they brought me in. It gave them perspective. So they did get to reflect, hey, look, we sold alongside this guy. We watched him sell. We watched him outsell us. We watched him out earn us. We watched him maximize profitability. We watched him sell more protection package. We watched him do all that. And now they had perspective. And so when I came back in, they were taking notes. I mean, there was a respect that had been established through perspective. That obviously, as you point out, it's harder to have when you have proximity.
So how long did you sell there? You probably didn't sell for real long. You're telling me about your training days, but how long did it go there at the dealership?
Yeah, so I only sold at that dealership for 2 years. My wife's master's program was a 2-year master's program. So it's kind of funny because when I got the job and I met the owner, I actually gave him 2 years notice. So I told him when I got the job, I said, my wife's here for 2 years. It's her master's program. When she graduates, we'll relocate. But for 2 years, I'll make you a lot of money. I'll do a great job. And, but I'm quitting in 2 years. So when she graduated, it was time for us to move on. She had a very specialized degree in a very small town in Emporia, Kansas. So we were going to relocate anyway. So then I moved on. Well, I got recruited at the time out of the dealership. My next opportunity was with a training company. So what had happened was there's a trainer who had gone to Kansas City and put in a seminar. And a bunch of the guys had gone to that seminar and watched this trainer at the seminar. I didn't get to go because I didn't need it at that point. I was one of the top people, so I didn't need to go. So they left the newest guy and me at the store, and they sent everyone else. So me and the new guy held the floor for the day. When the guys came back with the training, I said, let me see this. And I had some cassettes, and I was like, let me listen to this stuff. And it was really the first time I had heard a trainer talk about the car business in a way that really made sense. There was other trainers I had heard that I just didn't think they made sense at all. This guy made sense. And so he eventually came to the store and did a day of in-house at the dealership. But by then I had listened to those cassettes like 6 times because everything I learn at a level of mastery. I don't want to dabble. I want to master. That's why I haven't taken up golf. People are like, you should take up golf. I'm like, that'll drive me nuts. I'm not going to master golf. That's too much time. But so anyway, so when the trainer came in, I had already listened to his material like 6 times. So during the class, he's like, who are you? How do you know my stuff so well? So when I my wife graduated, I contacted him and said, hey, we're looking at moving to these cities. What's the best dealer groups in those cities? He said, why don't you just come work for me? 2 years with me is better than 20 years at any dealership. And he was right. So I actually worked for that company for 2 years before I started my own company. The formal, training company that I have is now 13 years old. 17 years ago, 2000s, when I got in the car business, 2 years at the dealership took me to 2002, 2002 to 2004, working for the other company, 2004 till now, 13 years has been on my own.
Do we know that trainer?
I don't know if you do.
Okay. I didn't know if it was somebody like we all knew or something. All right.
No, I don't know.
All right. So you worked for him for 2 years. Then what makes you want to start Cellcology? Was it named Cellcology from the start?
No, Cellcology as a brand name has only existed, I think, for about, I want to say 9 years. Prior to that, my company name was kind of goofy. It was called Plan B. I had named it Plan B Consulting, and my tagline was, when what you're doing is not working, it's time for Plan B. That was my tagline back then. But it was one of my customers, actually one of my clients, one of my training clients gave me the idea for Cellcology. So it actually came a little bit later. But, like I said, I was a trainer for the door-to-door company. I had studied sales. I had been a fan of Tony Robbins and Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Dennis Waitley, John Maxwell. I had studied Brian Tracy's work extensively. So I was an absorber of training to begin with. And I already had my own style. The reason I started my own company was simply because I was looking at the direction that the training company I was working for, I was looking at the direction they wanted to go, looking at the direction I was going. And again, this is not bragging or anything. It's a matter of fact. I was the number one trainer for that training company. I was the number one salesman for the seminar version of the company. So as an example, like the record when I started selling seminar tickets was like 80 people for a seminar. By my second seminar I had ever done, I had sold past 80. By my sixth seminar, I did 240. By my sixth one. So I had always kind of had my own way of doing things, my own style, if you will, of understanding how the sales process should work. So it just made sense for us to go our separate ways and start training people on the psychology. Most trainers, again, I'm not trying to dig at anybody, but this is just I think the difference. Most trainers make it about one of two things. It's either about their process or it's about their personality. Most trainers look at the thing and say, here's my process. This is the way I did things. If you want to be successful, do what I did. That is my system, my road to the sale, follow my steps. That's the way a lot of trainers think. Then there's other trainers who are personality based. It's act like me, sound like me, talk like me, be like me. If you would just be more like me, you would be successful. That's the other kind of trainers. I just didn't agree with either of those philosophies. I just thought, I'm not going to say there's one way to do it. That's just not true. And I'm not going to say there's one way to be. That's also not true. So what I said was, let's focus on the principles, the psychology, the foundational stuff that makes something work. Because I don't want to ever be the person who says, you're not good enough the way you are. You need to become more like me. I don't think that's true. I think that there's such a diversity of unique personalities and temperaments and people that it's almost insulting for me to come at you and say your deficiency is that you're not more like me. I don't have that kind of confidence. I can't say that. So what I want to do is examine the principles and say, when a technique works, why does it work? A process and say, okay, when this step works, why is it working? And help people understand the why behind the steps of the sale and the why behind a word track. And I found that to be a more effective way of learning, which at least that's my own personal opinion.
Well, I actually agree with that. Why would people want somebody to try to act like them when they can only be who they are? You know what I mean? So I know how passionate you are for salespeople. I know you are. We've talked many times about this. In fact, every conversation we've ever had, you've brought up how passionate you are about salespeople. When did that inspiration?
That's my video. If you ever Google psychology story.
Uh-oh.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. When did that inspiration start? Did that start straight away, right away, or was this something that built over the years? Your passion for salespeople.
So fundamentally, I think I've always been a somewhat compassionate person. I was in youth ministry from the time I got saved. I always wanted to teach people. I've been a teacher by gifting. I think my spiritual gift is that of a teacher. So I love teaching people. I love helping people understand the gospel. I love helping people understand the great mysteries of the kingdom of God. I love helping people understand things. I find teaching to be a wonderful, wonderful blessing that I have. So I've always kind of had some compassion for salespeople. But I think again, I go back to looking at the season of my life at early in my career, that 3-car month getting fired. To this day, if I talk about it too much or if I think about it too much, I swell up with emotion, thinking about how I would go home and explain to my wife, like, how am I going to look her in the eyes and tell her that I missed her for an entire month? I was a newlywed. Like, how am I going to tell her, I'm sorry, honey, you didn't see me for a month and I failed you? That I carry that with me as a burden for salespeople. I know what it's like to feel the shame of failure as a provider, to not be able to afford to even dream, to not feel like you can take care of the people you love. It stays with me. It's stuck in the fiber of my being. So when I'm training, my hope is that I can communicate everything I can, everything I think I feel like God's given me. I want to communicate that in such a way that it frees people from the burden that I had of not being able to provide. I don't want them to have that feeling. So I just kind of on a mission then, it's like, I don't know. It's just something to me. I love salespeople. I absolutely am in love with them. And it feels weird, I know, to hear somebody say that. And I sometimes even say it in the beginning of my training classes at a dealership where they don't even know me. And I say, I'm going to start by just telling you I love you. And I know it sounds ridiculous. You don't know me, but I love you. I care about you very much. And I want you to win. And so, yeah, it's been with me for a long time.
That's good, man. Thanks for sharing that with us. Let us in to a little bit. Let me go to more current day now. All right. So you've been doing this for a while. What frustrates you about the car business?
Man, about our industry, probably the thing that frustrates me is how little management dealers, how little they value people. There's a lot of words given by dealers. They'll say things like they care about their people. They'll say things like they love their people, or their people are the most important asset, blah, blah, blah. But it's not true. They don't. I mean, I can reflect back to, I was having a conversation with a GM, and he was saying to me, he's like, well, John, the reason why I don't want to spend money on training is because you waste your money on these people when they won't even put in the effort. He says, let me give you an example. And he begins to describe a salesperson to me that I know, who's a fan and follower. And this is a dealer who doesn't want to spend money on training. So I'm there trying to talk to him about training. He doesn't want to spend the money. And anyways, as he's talking to me, he's telling me about the salesperson. And as he's done complaining about the guy, I said, do you mind if I ask you, are you familiar with what's going on in this guy's life right now? He says, John, I don't care. He's got to leave it at the curb. And I said, so you don't know that his son is dying in the hospital right now? You don't know that? He's like, what? I said, yeah, the dude's little kid is dying. This guy who doesn't work for you because he's whatever, that same guy who doesn't have the energy to work for you is because he's at the hospital all night long because his son is dying. Man, this stuff eats me up. I can't handle it. So the thing that frustrates me the most is the lack of compassion for the people in this industry that what people have. That's probably the most frustrating thing.
Me too.
I can handle almost anything else, but indifference, it makes me want to take you outside and beat you.
Well, I love it. Well, I'll let you. I probably could point you to a couple of people you could do that.
I know. I've met them. I know they're out there.
I will tell you this. What it really frustrates me is I think the people that hide behind that they actually do care. Yeah. I would rather you just say you don't care, and I'll be all right with it. At least I know where you stand. You know what I mean? It's the people that disguise it what they do care, and then they really don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll tell you, Shawn, when I'm looking for a client, I had a vendor actually recently. He said, John, how would I know if a dealer's a perfect fit for you? And I said, the dealers that I'm looking for, it's really simple. I'm looking for dealers that love their customers and love their people. And I said, they need to love both of them. And the vendor says, oh, these guys, I'm telling you, they love their customers, they love their people. I said, who do you think they love more? Do they love customers more or people more? He said, obviously their business, they love their customers more. And I said, then I'm not interested in talking to them. Don't send them to me. If you think that's true, I don't even want to talk to them. I don't have the time to try to convince them they're wrong. So I'm not looking for those dealers. I'm looking for dealers who love their people more than they love their customer. Those are the ones I want to talk to.
Well, I feel like there's a movement right now where I noticed all the really big dealers and the people that are making things happen and the movers and the shakers in this industry are focusing on the customer or on the employee first. Mm-hmm. They're going through the employee to the customer and having a trickle down effect. And it's really dynamic. And I love watching it because I really wish that all organizations were run like that. I think we'd all be better. how hard is it for you to walk into a company that first day, okay, and you see the landscape of it? Will you kind of explain to me what you do when you walk in a place and you've never been there before? What is your process in that?
Well, so I actually practice what I preach and teach. So I preach and teach to salespeople. You want to build a book of business where you're celebrated and not just tolerated. That's a very important thing for my students. Build a business where you're celebrated. Don't survive merely being tolerated. So I try to practice that in my own business, as you can imagine. So I look for clients that will celebrate me. I look for a dealer that has a certain vision and mission. Now, I do walk into some broken stores. I mean, I've walked into some very broken stores, but the dealer or the GM who's taking over that store has a really compelling vision. He says, hey, John, we can turn something around. So typically the process goes, somebody who's somewhat familiar with me, they've been what I call indoctrinated. It's a process I teach my students to create indoctrination. Indoctrination is the process by which you teach someone a set of beliefs that you want them to accept. And so my dealers are typically indoctrinated. They believe in what I do. They believe in me. They believe in what I'm trying to do. So there's already kind of a preset stage. Then typically there's a survey that I have my clients complete. The management team completes a survey that assesses kind of where they're at, where they want to be, what the gap might be. And then based on that, we kind of come up with a strategy and a game plan. From when I come in the first time, I almost always offer what I call my buffet style, my Chinese buffet style of training. And what I do is I just go up to the front of the room and I say, look, you guys don't know me, but I'm here to see if I can help. I'm a collector of ideas. I've been able to collect some great ideas. I want to share kind of a menu and say, we could talk about these different topics. We can talk about sales strategies. We can talk about marketing strategies. We can talk about mindset. We can talk about different kinds of personalities of customers. So think of it like a Chinese buffet, and you get a plate and you get to walk up whatever, row you want and scoop food onto your plate. What do you guys want to talk about? And then as my first time in the store, I let the class determine the entire training schedule. So they all pick the topics. And then I put them on the whiteboard, and then one by one throughout the day, I just hammer value on the hot button issue for each individual salesperson. And this gets the collective trust of the salespeople. So now the training classroom time is done. Now it's time to put the rubber to the road. This is the time now to go ahead and make something happen. So what I do that's very different, I think, than most trainers, and I'll show you something on my phone here just to kind of give you an idea, is after the class, I hit the floor and start selling cars because I love actually selling cars. And so I don't know if you can see this really, but this is a recording app here on my phone. Now, in most states, or in a lot of states, it's called single party consent, which means only one person has to know that there's a recording device recording the conversation. In two-party states, you have to let both parties know, but a lot of states, it's one party. So what I do is all of these here are recordings with me with customers. This is me out on the lot. This is me taking TOs. This is me on test drives. This is me closing car deals. This is me taking phone calls. This is me handling heat cases. Every one of those, these are just recordings with customers. So that's all that. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So what I do is I just take my phone, turn on the recorder, slide it in my pocket like that. The microphone's right there. And then I record myself, because salespeople always ask, hey, what did you say to that customer? How did you get them to turn around? How did you do that? And I'm not going to be the kind of trainer who tells some fancy schmancy story. I'm going to just give you the recording. Here's exactly what I said. So I don't have to make up any crap. It's every TO is recorded. I don't take a TO without recording them. So that just gives the validation to the sales team. So then they're like, wow, this guy actually practices what he preaches, because it actually has to work. I can't teach a technique that doesn't work, because I get found out really quickly.
Do you feel like Facebook and how much interaction you've had on Facebook, do you think that's helped you when you go into these dealerships? Do a lot of them know you already?
Yes. So there's definitely kind of a preset stage for many stores. When I walk in and salespeople are like, oh my gosh, I've been following you, I was using your technique the other day I found on YouTube or whatever. So yeah, definitely social media expansion, the expansion of social media and the way I am on social media, I think has definitely helped me, because I basically do content marketing is all I do. I'm terrible at traditional marketing. So I don't know how to create an ad. I'm terrible at that. So what I'm good at is teaching and giving examples and demonstrating. And then what I figure is, if you watch enough of that, you're going to be like, this guy's legit. I want to sign up with him. And so that's all I've done. And that's exactly what it does at the dealership. If they've been following me, they're so excited to actually get to work with me hands-on.
Okay, now say you go into that dealership, Jonathan, and the sales floor knows you, but maybe a couple of the managers don't know you or don't buy in. Do you ever have problems with that? Because a lot of times the salesmen will buy in, but if the managers don't buy in, you're going to have a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, so in order to prevent that, I used to have that a lot work. That was a problem I had in the past, Shawn. It's not a problem today, but it was a problem in the past. So like earlier in my career, I was sloppier. I would just try to close a deal and just try to get the deal closed, and then just try to force my training in. If the GM liked me, by God, I was going to get everybody on board. I don't do that anymore, though. So my business model now, because I use indoctrination, the part of the process is that they complete the survey, but also I send the management a series of videos, and they have to watch these videos because they're going to get on a conference call with me, or they're going to have a sit-down managers meeting with their GM. And so before I ever walk in the door now, most of the time, the management team to some degree is already familiar and bought in. Now, it does happen occasionally that you have somebody who's a little bit of an outlier, somebody who's a little bit more skeptical. But once I'm on the floor and I'm doing the thing that I do, it's like I win them over pretty quick. Because like managers, they want to make money. So when I take a TO and they're like, holy crap, this guy actually knows what he's doing. All right, you got my respect. I won't use names, but I was at a store a while ago where it was my first time in the store, and the manager actually said, hey, John, you want to take this turn? And I said, absolutely. He's like, so what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. He said, what do you want to know? I said, I don't need to know anything. Just tell me where the customer is. I'll go turn it. So I go in on a turn. The deal got put together. It really wasn't even that difficult of a turn. Came back to the desk, and I said, yeah, we're wrapped up. And he hands the other guy $20, and he says, well, I guess you were right. So one manager said, that guy won't take a turn, because another trainer had been in the store. And when they asked that trainer to take the turn, the trainer said, I'm not here to do your job. I'm here to tell you how to do your job. Wow. So the manager said, this guy's not going to, so one manager won a $20 bet over the other manager, because he said, he's not going to take a turn. I'll take every turn there is.
When you take that turn, okay, yeah. So take me to that day. You take that turn. What's the first thing that you do when you go into I'm sure it's in an office. You don't know too much. It sounds like you don't want to know too much about the deal. You just go in kind of blind. What's the first thing you're doing right then?
Yeah, so I prefer to go in as blind as possible. I really don't want that much information. If the deal is not closing, it's probably already caused too many false understandings of what's happening. So I prefer to go in clean. So typically what I'll do is I'll walk up to the customer and just introduce myself. I say, I'm Jonathan Dawson. I'm in sales and customer service. So that's the title that I created as a salesman. I've kept that title now for 17 years. I'm Jonathan Dawson. I'm in sales and customer service. Okay. So there's a backstory to that I'll give you in a second. But anyway, so I introduce myself, sales and customer service. And then I also, as a pattern interruption, I'll say I'm also the ambassador of smiles. And then I look for their reaction. If they immediately smile, I just say, my job here is done. And then we all kind of have a chuckle. If I say I'm the ambassador of smiles and they don't smile, I say, I see you're not smiling, so I'm glad I'm here. What's going on? And then I just take the turn and try to understand what's going on, the goals, the wants, needs, and understand, what's happening. But that sales and customer service line is really important as a strategic technique for those watching the video. As I started to develop my approach as a salesman, I was so different than most customers or most customer experiences they had, that one of my customers said to me during my opening, as I was talking 2 minutes into greeting them, the customer said, I'm confused. Are you a salesman here or not? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean? He says, well, you don't talk like a salesman. Are you in customer service? Are you the son of the owner? Who are you? And I said, no, actually, I'm a salesperson. I said, I guess that's a compliment. He said, yeah, I've never met a salesman who talks the way you talk. So when he said, you must be in customer service, I thought, boom, that's it from now on. So the next customer I greeted, I said, I'm actually in sales and customer service. I answered directly to my owner. My responsibility here is for you to have a great experience, even if you don't buy a car. I'd like to understand what your goals are. So then the customer would start interacting with me totally different. Now, here's where it got really interesting, Shawn. So then what I would do is I started having a little fun with this. I'd say, hey, I'm in sales and customer service. I answer the owner. My goal is to make sure you have a great experience while you're at the dealership. And then as we're talking, if they would ask me a question about price, they'd say, well, what's your best price on this one? I would say, folks, I appreciate that question. Certainly back when I was like a normal salesperson, I would probably have to know that off the top of my head. But since I'm now more on the customer service side, I don't really pay attention to the details like that. But I can do two things. I can either get you that information here in a little bit, or I can turn you over to one of our salespeople and you can work directly with a normal car salesman. And the customer would say, no, that's okay. No, that's okay. No, if it's okay, we'll just keep working with you. And sometimes the customers would even ask me, is it okay if we buy a car from you, or do we have to buy it from a salesman? And I said, actually the owner prefers that I help as many customers as I can a week, just so he knows that it's being done right. And if you want to buy a car from me between now and let's say the next hour and a half, we can do that. If it's going to be much later than that, I have other appointments. So if you want to do something within an hour and a half, I'm sure I can help you out. Otherwise, I can put you with a normal salesman. And they'd be like, no, we can buy a car right now.
I absolutely love Ambassador of Smiles, by the way.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. I absolutely love it. I'm sure it's going to get stolen tonight. I'm pretty sure, but that is brilliant. All right. So give me a piece of tangible advice that you can give a struggling salesperson right now, or someone that's either a green pea or a veteran that's struggling. What would be a tangible piece of advice that you can give them?
Well, I'm going to start with a kind of a psychological piece of advice, because as you know, everything I teach is first rooted in psychology. So first of all, I would say you have to, I think, make a decision about what you will no longer tolerate and what you will no longer celebrate in your business. Let me explain. I think we tolerate too much in our own business models. We tolerate coming in on our days off. We tolerate working past our schedules. We tolerate having to deal with grinder customers. We tolerate a certain level of abuse from either our management or from our customers because we haven't built a business where we're celebrated. So we are left with the alternative of being tolerated and then having to tolerate that. So I would say, if you can make some distinctions in your business, I'm no longer going to tolerate a certain kind of business model that I have now. I'm no longer going to tolerate selling 12 cars a month. I'm no longer going to tolerate having to depend on lot traffic. I'm no longer going to tolerate having to depend on BDC traffic. I'm not going to tolerate that in my business model. And then I'm also going to flip the switch and say, I'm no longer going to celebrate certain things. Like I don't think it's right to celebrate a hat trick if you didn't create the hat trick. Like if the dealership advertises the cheapest cars in town, customers come in to buy those cheap cars, and then you simply don't screw it up and you sell 3 cars. I get it. You sold 3 cars. I understand it, and I'm happy for you. But you can't really celebrate that. All you did was not screw it up. But if you created those 3 sales, if you prospected them, if you social media generated them, if you used a referral strategy that brought them into you, you built that. That is worth celebrating. So I would say the mindset is the first thing you've got to shift. I like to say salespeople are transactional. They're not relational and they're not generational. So what happens, unfortunately, is you look at a single person as a car deal instead of looking at the long-term residual value of that relationship. See, wealth is created when you create multiple streams of passive and residual income. Every wealthy person on the planet has created multiple streams of passive residual income into their life. When you sell a car, if you do not capture a video testimonial, if you do not capture a photo of that customer, if you do not capture reviews, if you do not capture referrals, if you do not capture that, all you've done is you've cut off the stream of passive and residual value from that client. You've created a transaction, you've sold a car, you've exchanged time for money, but you get no long-term value, you get no wealth creation. Wealth creation comes from setting it up in such a way that you get passive and residual value from that initial sale. So it's not enough to simply sell 20 cars in a month. If you don't sell 20 cars a month in such a way that you create this wealth stream, then you're hero to zero the next month, starting over all over again. So you've got to leverage every sale for the passive and residual value of that relationship, not simply for the transactional value of that relationship. So if I was to give a practical thing, I would say from this day forward, no longer tolerate simply selling a car. Sell a car in such a way that you create a raving fan advocate and create lifetime passive and residual value from that relationship, which means you've got to commit to the videos, you've got to commit to the photos, you got to commit to the reviews, you got to commit to the referral request. You've got to create those residual streams of value from that relationship so that passively your business is growing over time. That would be a very specific thing you've got to do.
Wow, that was really good. Thank you. I want to ask you about culture in a dealership.
Mm-hmm.
Culture to me is, I think, absolutely so important. I think just for that company to succeed. Do you think culture is probably the most important thing in kind of what determines success or failure in a business?
Yeah, it's kind of like the environment, right? A culture is another way of saying environment. There's certain things that can survive in certain environments. You can take a great white apex shark. You can take the apex predator and put it in the Sahara Desert. It dies really quick. It doesn't matter how great someone is. If they're put in the wrong environment, it's really hard to survive in a certain environment. So culturally, it's so important because, look, there's so few people, and Shawn, I want to take a second to just give you some honor. Shawn, there's so few people like you on the planet who can be in an environment that's not fully supportive of what you do, and yet you push out so much value through that environment that you're able to somehow shield yourself from the lack of support and even from some of the antagonism I'm sure you get. There's so few of you in the world, and so a culture creates an environment where the average man or woman can survive and grow and become healthy, because it takes a very unique trait, a temperament, personality, very unique person to be able to endure an unhealthy culture. So culture is really critical because it gives the whole a chance to survive, thrive, and win. And so I really wish that dealers would pay more attention to their culture, to their vision, to their mission, to their core values, to what they're about, to what they, again, I use these words a lot, to what they're willing to celebrate and to what they're willing to tolerate, to raise their standards and hold people to a high standard. Yesterday, I had a class with a sales team, and the lady who was role playing with me, her name is Angelica. She was actually in one of the videos I went stream live from yesterday at the store. And she was really mousy when she first got up to do the role play. I mean, she was really kind of in her shell, and she spoke so softly, and she was just super kind of self-aware, self-conscious. And I said, look, I know you're uncomfortable, but I want to ask you a question. You know, tell me, do you care about your financial future more than you care about your current discomfort? Do you have a goal, a vision? Do you have something more important than feeling comfortable right now? And she said, yeah. I said, then I'm going to ask you to rise to the standard of your goal. I want to ask you to rise to a higher standard. I said, if you want me to, I can lower my standards for you. I will do that if you want me to. Do you want me to hold you to a high standard, or do you want me to lower my standards for you? She said, hold me to a high standard. And we spent 25 minutes in front of the whole class, just me and her role playing. And the end result was so phenomenal. She got a friggin' ovation from the audience. The transformation was so beautiful to watch. And the reason I mentioned that about culture is, you know, we have to create a culture where we expect excellence, and then we create an environment where excellence can exist, even from people that at the moment you first meet them, you're like, this person's got nothing. This person ain't going to make it. Give them an environment where they can succeed. Do everything you can to create a culture for success. I think you owe it to them. If you're a leader, it's a moral obligation to create a healthy culture for your people, for them to succeed for their families.
I agree with you 100%. And I thank you for trying to make it better in our industry. But can you tell me, what do you think makes a successful culture? What are the intangibles?
Yeah, so I think definitely the humility of the leadership is a critical first ingredient. A leader who is willing to say, I don't know it all, I'm not done, I was wrong. A leader who will apologize to their team, that's a powerful person I'll follow. So I think it starts at the leadership, the humility that is required to properly serve people. Jesus gave us the symbolic gesture when he washed the disciples' feet of what leadership really looks like. It's, are you willing to do whatever is necessary to show the people that you are leading that you love them? So I would say servant leadership, humility within the leadership, and then I would say vision. You know, Tony Robbins puts it this way. He says, a leader's mandates are this. Mandate number one, you must see things as they are, but not worse than they are. Mandate number 2, you must see the way things could be. And then mandate number 3 is you must make it so. You must make it the reality that you see in your imagination. And I think there's so much truth to that. Leadership of vision, casting vision. Scripture says you must cast your vision before the people so they can run with it. Another place it says that the people perish for a lack of vision. So I think culture also has to include vision. You have to have something compelling and interesting that causes people to want to grow to the vision. So I think that's really important. And then, of course, the other things that go into a culture is teamwork, effort, accountability, fairness and justice. I think you got to have both fairness and justice. So I think those are some of the ingredients.
Man, you're good. You know what, Jonathan? I love these spotlights because I really like you now. I really, really passionately. I mean, I liked you before and I got to watch your stuff and I respected your work. But I feel like these spotlights, man, I get a whole hour with somebody and I ask them and I really see their personality. I see what makes them tick and I see what makes them the person they are. So I appreciate you for coming on here and sharing your knowledge with us today because, man, you're awesome, bro. You really, really, truly are. And I got 2 more questions for you. So hold on.
Okay.
I know we're going a little bit past the time, guys. I hope everybody's okay with it. But, man, this is really, really good stuff. So I want your opinion on where our industry is going in the future. Where do you see it?
I think there's 2 roads in front of the industry as a whole. I think there's the commodity road of looking towards automation, and then there's the experience road looking to wow people. So I think that as dealers recognize the compression of the marketplace of profits and things like that, they're forced to take a hard choice. Either I drive down the road of we're a commodity, we're going to be a commodity. It's about price. It's about being the lowest. It's about being an Amazon, a Walmart, or we're going to go this other road and we're going to become Disney and we're going to become an experience. And we're going to cause people to willfully choose to pay us a premium because we give them such a valued experience that they want to talk about it afterwards. I think that the divergence of our industry soon will be one where dealers will have to make a choice. If you try to play the middle ground, you're going to go under. You're going to get bought up by somebody else. I think my students prove this in the marketplace all the time, and my clients certainly demonstrate this. I mean, the store that I was just at in Jackson, right? That guy who's running that store is a GM now. He was a GSM in Kentucky. When he brought on Cellcology, we made a lot of great changes. It became the #1 store in the state for his brand. When he came down to Mississippi, again, the same thing. It was a broken store. He took over. He's now the GM. It's been 2.5 months since he took over. It's now the #1 for its brand in the entire state. We didn't do that by deciding to be the cheapest in town. We decided to become the best experience in town. We wanted to create raving fan advocates. I really feel, and of course, if you follow my work, you know this, is if you create a raving fan advocate experience, then you can out-experience your competition. You don't have to outprice them. You can out-experience them. And people willingly choose to pay a premium every day for entertainment or for experience. Think about people who go to an IMAX theater 3D and they pay $32 to go see a movie. Why are they paying that? Well, because the experience is transformative in front of an IMAX Star Wars with 3D on. It's just a different experience. And people will pay 2 or 3 times premium to do that. I believe that same customer who will do that for a movie will do that in an automotive experience. They will pay a premium to have an experience that's worth talking about. So I think that the future of the business is to decide which one are you going to be? Are you going to be a commodity-based dealership or are you going to be an experience-based dealership?
So do you think there's room in the industry for both?
I think there is room in the industry for both, yes, because I think that there's always a consumer market for Walmart as there is for Nordstrom's. I think there's always a consumer experience out there for the cheapest thing you can buy and the premium thing you can buy. I think there will always be people who want to have it one way or the other. So I think the marketplace can easily sustain both. I just don't want to work at a dealership that views me as a commodity and views customers as a number. I wouldn't work there, but I think there will be people who can work there, and I think it will be a successful business model for those dealers.
What do you think is the biggest concern for the auto industry? Okay, I see where you see it's going, but what do you see, I guess, from what I just took out of that, is if you don't decide on one or the other, you're going to fail.
That's what I would say is the biggest concern. Yeah, the biggest concern is the middle ground. Again, I keep pulling some references, but I wish that you were hot or cold, but you're lukewarm. I spit you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
You got to pick a side. Who are you going to be? But I think that's the biggest concern. Dealers who try to dabble, dealers without vision, they're gonna struggle. Dealers that don't know how to create an experience can't be profitable in a marketplace that demands, one or the other. If you don't know how to create it, you're going to go out of business.
That's some good stuff. Well, we're down to the last question, Jonathan, and you probably already know what that question is because you tell all the people that are coming on this show what my last question is. Why don't you grace the audience here with your favorite 3 albums of all time?
Yeah, I do know you're going to ask this question, of course, and it's interesting because I obviously put some thought into this. So I actually, my answer is going to not be albums. I'm going to have to modify my answer to podcasts. So Fair. I don't, because, and this is because I honestly, I don't really listen to music that much at all. So I don't really have albums. I would suck at a trivia game about music because I don't really listen to it. Most of my time in my car, I'm listening to podcasts, not albums or not music. So if I was to pick podcasts, my first one is called Reasonable Faith. It can be found on any of the on Android or Apple. Reasonable Faith podcast. It's by William Lane Craig. He's one of my heroes. He is an apologist, which is also the ministry that I serve in as a teacher in churches. I'm an apologist. An apologist, for those of you who don't know, is someone who gives answers for difficult questions about faith, God, about truth, about eternity. It's a person who seeks to understand it and seeks to give an answer back. It's based on the verse in 1 Peter that says, always be prepared. Setting aside Christ in your heart as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer to those who ask you for the reason, for the hope that you have. So an apologist is someone who studies giving good reasons. Anyway, so Reasonable Faith is my first podcast that I would say I absolutely love. The next one that I would say you have to listen to is another podcast, and it's actually based on the same topic, but it's done by a really neat guy called William J. Wallace, and it's called Cold Case Christianity. He is a world famous cold case investigator, and he became a Christian by studying the case for Christ as a cold case file. So he was an atheist who believed in evidence, and someone challenged him and said, look, you believe in evidence, you study old cases for a living, you're a famous dude who solves crimes that happened, 100 years ago. Solve the crime of Jesus. Did he really die on a cross? Did he really rise from the dead? So that's another wonderful podcast. Then I'll give a fun one, which is Freakonomics. Freakonomics is a very interesting podcast on seeing the world in a different way. So I would use those 3 podcasts. I can listen to them all day long forever and never get tired.
Awesome, Jonathan. Jonathan, did you have a good time tonight?
Brother, I had such a great time. And again, I want to say something I know I've told you, Shawn, but I hope that those who are listening can just take a second and honor you as well. I have prayed for people like you to enter into the business. I have prayed for people like you to rise up, to bring about more value, to solve problems, to serve my industry. I'm on a mission to save the world one salesperson at a time, and I can't do it by myself. I need other people to love my people, love the industry, and to try to want to serve them too. And so you are the answer to a prayer that has been a long time prayer. I really appreciate all that you've done, all you're doing, and I'm really excited to see what God does going forward in your life, and how this interesting conversations you're having now turn into something down the road. When we look at the sovereignty of God, we look back on time and we see his handiwork. He's prepared good works for you to enter into, brother. And I'm really, really happy to be on this stream with you.
Well, I appreciate you very, very much. I have a new respect level for you after tonight, and I want to give you a piece of advice. What the heck are you waiting on? Will you get Bill Have and send him out on the road and train this guy? Because this guy he is going to be working with you. He already wrote in the comments, I will work for Jonathan Dawson one day.
I love this guy. I have a lot of great students. He has a very tender place in my heart. I really cherish Bill so much, and I'm so grateful for all that he's done using the psychology that I've given him. And he does have some maturing to do before I could put him under my brand. But you know what? If one day in the future I get to introduce Bill to a sales team as one of my guys, that would be a great honor. I love the guy.
It will be a great honor. And the honor was all ours tonight, Jonathan. I want to thank you. If you don't know about psychology and you don't follow Jonathan Dawson on Facebook, you need to. Okay. He's dropping knowledge tonight. Also, your YouTube page. Do you want to tell people how to find you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think so. So I think if I did this correctly, this should come up all right. So this is my app, right? So text sell to 36260. That'll get you my app. From my app, you'll have access to my YouTube channel. You'll have access to my audio channel, my SoundCloud. You'll have access to my Facebook group that I have. You'll have access to my content. I post a lot of free stuff. You can Google Cellcology. I'm all over the web like Spider-Man, so you can find me anywhere. And as I said, I'm only looking for those that are looking for me. I'm not in the business of convincing people anymore. If I have to convince you to love your people, I'm not interested in talking to you. If I have to convince you to add value to your customer, I'm not interested in talking to you. You know, I'm only looking for those that are looking for me. And I'm trying to save the world one salesperson at a time. And so if you want to do that, I'd love to help you. 2017, I'll share with you, Shawn, has been a banner record year. In fact, it's almost double my best year I've ever had. It has been an explosive year. Last year was a record year. This year is on pace to almost double my last year. I've had 3 record years in a row. Business is good. There's a lot of dealers who want to transform the industry, and I'm so honored that they partner with me. And again, I'm here to serve. If I can ever add value, please let me know. I'm here to do it.
Well, you added a lot of value tonight. Guys, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Don't forget, QuickPage, the best video app in the business. They help me out a lot. They sponsor this show. They do a great job. And if you need to send video, try out QuickPage. I endorse it fully. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. Everybody, I'm sure Jonathan's going to spend some time comment with you here in a little bit. I thank you very much, Jonathan, and God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much, Shawn. Bye, everybody.